Hi, I'm Paul Rosario. I'm the facilities manager here at Corp, and 3D printing is one of the elements that I look after. And we're very pleased today to invite Smiley along to have a look at our services today. Hopefully you'll find this useful and enjoy the video.
Off you go.
So what we have here is effectively a 3D printer for the manufacturer Z Corporation. A 3D printer effectively is an output device for 3D CAD data. So what we do is we take your 3D data and we, inside of our native software, we slice your CAD data into layers, hundreds or thousands of layers depending on the size of the part, and then we process it through a 3D printer. I'll take you through the workings of the machine a little bit, but we have in this product, we have a binder and a powder which effectively bind and cure to create a part. On the machine here we have a clear binder, we have a yellow, a magenta and a cyan. The binders travel through an inkjet system, an ink tube system, which is very similar to what you would see on your inkjet printers. So again, we haven't reinvented the wheel here, we're using inkjet technology to print. The only difference is we're not printing onto paper, we're printing onto a powder. So the binder travels through an ink tube system down into a print carriage. The print carriage, again, we're still using standard inkjet technology here. Inside the print carriage we have a print head, just like you've probably seen before on your standard inkjet printers. The binder through the carriage into the print head, and the print head through its nozzle sprays the binder onto the powder. What you have here, we have two beds here. Effectively, this side of the bed is what we class as our build chamber. This side of the bed is our powder reservoir. So when you physically print, you print on this side of the bed. The powder reservoir sits on a piston which moves up. So as we print a layer, we then drag a layer of powder over the top of the printed area, and we repeat that process time and time again. So effectively what we're doing is processing layers of 2D data and printing them on top of each other. And the binder and the powder react and cure to create a physical 3D part. At the end of the process, once it's physically printed, which you'll get to see later on when we start the machine, we have to then actually, with hoovers and different tools, we remove a lot of the loose powder around the part until we can actually get it into a position where we can physically handle it or put it onto a tray. Once we've done that, we then have to take it into a recycling station where we compressed air and brushes, we remove a lot of the loose powder. And then from that process, once we've got rid of anything that's loose or shouldn't be there, we then take it and infiltrate the part, which is where we dip it effectively in a very fine cyanoacrylate, a super glue if you will, just a very thin super glue that makes the part very, very strong. So I think, like we were saying earlier on, when we take your CAD data or your 3D data, effectively we put it into the Z-print software, which is the application you can see running here. The boundary box here is effectively our build chamber. On this device we have the ability to be able to build multiple parts or very large parts inside of this one chamber. So I'll just import a part here, center this so you guys can see it. Okay, so just like when we saw there, we saw the part obviously was being powdered. What you have here is effectively a 3D file. So someone has drawn this in their CAD application, whatever it may be, Maya on a Mac, or it might be AutoCAD on a PC, whatever application they've used. They then export it to something like an STL or a VRML type file, which is effectively a 3D printable format which we can accept. And then effectively we'll take it into this software. The software again allows us to print multiple parts, so we can gang parts up, we can build parts. As long as there's a millimetre between them, it will print them as separate parts. We can print very large parts or we can print multiple parts in one chamber. The clever thing about what the software effectively does here, it takes your data and it slices it into layers. So when we talk about printing layers, we're talking about printing in 2D. So what you can see here now is effectively how the machine will print. So when we click go in a minute, this will be the very first layer that it prints. This block, which you can effectively see is the base of the part here. And then we'll just step this up layer by layer. So you can see the first few layers here are obviously going to be very solid because the base of that part is quite solid. And if we start skipping through a few, now what you can see is going to start printing some of the actual surroundings and terrain there. Until eventually what we have now is it starting to actually build the developments and the towers coming out of the part. So we're now, if you can see, we're 114 layers into the print, so it effectively gone and done it, repeated its process 114 times. We get to the top of the part, and then we'll slowly disappear until it prints the very first, the last layer. So this particular part, if we were to send it to print, would be 366 layers. So we repeat that process when we say it sprays the binder, drags the powder, sprays the binder, drags the powder. It will repeat itself 366 times, and eventually, once it's finished its process, you'll have your physical 3D part. This particular part, just to give you an indication, will take 1 hour 58 minutes to print. That's print time. Obviously, once it's finished printing, you then got to depowder it, clean it up, and infiltrate. So, you know, in terms of actually from point of print to production, I would suggest that probably take about 3 hours in total, something like that. So what you can see here is the machine physically printing. So this is, again, like the process we said, the print carriage is spraying the binder layer by layer. So effectively it's spraying the binder now onto the powder, and then what you'll see in a minute is the arm there will drag a fine layer of powder over the top of this layer of binder, and it will slowly repeat itself. So like we said, it's printing one layer at a time.
See?
So just like we were saying before, it's still doing exactly the same, it's printing a layer at a time, but here you can see it's only laying binder down where it physically needs to create the part. All of the white space around the colour of the binder there, you can see will be loose powder, and then that will be removed obviously when we come to depowder the part.